Welcome to FliteTest, I'm Josh, and today we're going to be showing you how to build the FT Old Speedster. Now if you haven't seen the review of the FT Old Speedster, it's basically a companion for our favorite plane, the FT Old Fogey, which came out in scratch build form over a year ago. You wonderful folks wanted the FT Old Fogey to come out as a speed build kit, but we didn't want to release it alone, so we brought out the Speedster. It carries the same flight characteristics as the Old Fogey, but has a much sportier look back from the 1930s. So if you haven't already, go ahead and go to the end of the article on the FT Old Speedster build and download the free plans, or you can buy a speed build kit and get everything just as you always have with the speed build kits. Get your parts and stuff in order and we'll get started. Before we start this build though, you're going to want to make sure your power pod is built with your 24 gram 1300 kV motor, and also that you have your two servos centered up with the linkage stoppers. And there's also a new addition to this, which is wheel pants. Our great friend Alex Zavada, who is behind the camera right now, designed some wonderful wheel pants for this. We're going to have a whole separate build video for that linked below. Reason being is because it's going to be adaptable to the FT Cruiser, the Baby Blender, and a separate store item, so we want you to be able to build that too. So go to those links below, build them at your convenience, but you're going to want to have them done before the end of the airplane. Get your stuff in order, we'll get started. First thing we're going to start with the Old Speedster is going to be the wings. Get those out of the way first, and if you've built the Old Fogey before, the Old Speedster is the exact same wing, with the exception to some reference lines and also the center cut out here to help you put the power pod in. Now, if you're scratch building, the black lines are cut through, the red lines are 50% score cut, the blue lines are crease, and the green lines are reference lines. Don't neglect to put those on the plans because it's going to be very, very important. This wing is actually not mounted center on the airplane. It's actually shifted to the left just slightly to take care of some torque issues with the motor. That way, everything true. But the first thing you want to do is pop out your wing or cut it out, and then open up the fold, and then crease it back in. And now don't just try to bend it once, just rock it up and let this foam crush down in this area right here. Once you do that, you want to be able to slide these little gauges here, and this is the exact same process with the Old Fogey in the front and the two sides of the wing. Make sure that when you do it, that it's not pushing too hard on this. You don't want a lot of pressure on this area. Once you're happy with that, simply fill the groove with some hot glue. You don't have to go too excessive. Go just enough so it squeezes out on the top. Once you have this, just go simply on both ends. The reason I go on both ends here is because I want the exact same angles to be there. Now make sure when you do this you keep everything nice and flat. If you have a twisted wing, the plane's not going to fly too well. You can take a scrap piece of foam while we're at it and then smear it. By glue smearing over that crack is actually going to provide an immense amount of strength. We're going to repeat the exact same process as we did with the center of the wing with the outer wingtips. Crack it open, hold down, fold it up, let it crush in a little bit, make sure we have plenty of lift. And once this center section is dried, we're just going to move these gauges over and then put them on the outer banks. With this one, since it curls in, we're only going to go to where the actual roll on the leading edge starts. Once again, we'll keep this back part nice and flat. You know you're good when you can take this out and the leading edge of your wing does not drop an inch. Let's go ahead and repeat that process again. And while this is finished drying, we're going to go ahead and repeat the exact same process with this one here. Now that our three wing pieces are final, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same process as the Old Fogey, and that's going to be to join it. And this is called polyhedral. That's where the brakes are in the outer bands of the wing. Dihedral is where the brake is in the center. If you had three brakes like in the simple Soar, it's polydihedral. So polydihedral, three brakes. In this case, what we're going to want to do is we're just going to do a quick loose fit to make sure everything meets up nice and careful. Now, if you're scratch building this, take great care to make sure you cut these wing panels out exactly. If you do that, everything's going to dial in beautifully and fit really, really nice. That looks really good. And this looks really good. Now, on the Old Fogey, I actually had a Swedish friend to help me, but not everyone has a Swedish friend, and they let me know about that. So what I have in the kit and also available on the plans, just simply cut this out of some scrap foam board. This is going to be a little gauge for you to put on the wingtip that'll hold it at the exact right angle for you. So once again, it's on the plans and also in the kit itself too. The other thing we're going to want to do is one wingtip at a time. I'm going to use these to keep this nice and flat as everything drying. You don't want anything to lift up or it's going to cause you some problems. Alright, our test fit's good. We're going to go ahead and put a simple bead of glue, not too excessive. We're going to go back and reinforce it later. Just a nice steady bead. It's okay if it smears out a little bit, we want that. And I'm just going to lay this down and rock it up. And here's where I'm going to bring in that little piece there, right at the crease of our wingtip. Once we have that, we can put our energy into making sure this is nice and lined up. Now I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of weight on both sides here so it stays nice and flat. Now that this portion of the wing is dry, move these weights away, and I'm just going to simply go over the top of it with a thin bead of glue. Once again, keeping that theme, smearing the glue nice and thin. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just keep it nice and clean. There we go. Afterwards, you're going to reinforce the rest of the wing on the bottom with some tape. We're going to repeat the exact same process as we did on the right side of the wing on the left now. Now while the wing is drying, I'm going to go ahead and start on the control surfaces. Now once again with the plans, black is cut through, red is score cut. You're going to have a red line going through here on the plans. That's 50% score cut. What we're going to want to do now is we're going to fold this over 180 degrees and we're going to cut a beveled edge. Now my favorite Swede actually showed something really cool with his Spitfire design. Rather than cutting the beveled edge and making this area thin, I'm going to go ahead and cut it on the main stabilizer. It's not going to do much of a difference and it's going to look the exact same, but there's a little bit more meat on the stabilizer, and that way you're not weakening where your elevator is. There we go. If any of you guys have followed the builds before, this is very common for you. Just going to make sure we're happy with the deflection. Don't need a whole lot. You just want nice clean throws, roughly 16 to 20 degrees each way. Not even going to use that when you're flying. Alright, let's go ahead and do the rudder here. Simply going to take the rudder, we're going to crack it open, and this time we are going to cut the bevel on the rudder side because there's more meat there. This can also be done with sandpaper. If you don't want to be using a razor blade, you don't have to. You can do sandpaper on a sanding block, just a little bit more dusty. Now, another trick in making your planes last longer, because the paper will eventually delaminate, especially after some hard landings and crashes, or God forbid you get it wet. You can simply open this area up, and with your hot glue gun, push the nozzle down in. And then when I say don't put a lot on, I truly mean it. Just simply push a little bit of hot glue right on that paper, and then follow up with a scrap piece of foam board, and scrape as much as you can out of it. I'm not going to go ahead and put this back together. I'm just going to simply let it dry as it is. And once it's thoroughly dried, we'll go ahead and move it. Another thing you can do is actually sprinkle a little bit of talcum powder in there after it's thoroughly dried. That way you don't get that tacky noise every time it meets against itself. Let's go ahead and repeat the same process and reinforce the elevator now. Alright, our wing actually is immensely strong. If you have a nice glue joint, you'll be amazed how rigid this is. But what I want to do is I want to follow it up, and I want to reinforce this lower area. You're not going to be flying and pulling many negative G's with this plane, so I'm not too concerned about the negative G's, but I am concerned about the positive, especially if you get in a panic situation and you start really pulling on the control surfaces. So I want to reinforce it with a little bit more than just glue. I'm just going to actually just take the simple Scotch tape. It's nice and thin. You can also use packing tape if you wish. Just don't get too heavy and extreme with it. This is meant to be a slow flying airplane, so you don't want to go and make it too heavy where it has to fly fast. And I'm simply going to take that Scotch tape and go right down the bottom. Alright, no ailerons, no servos. The wing is now officially done. We're going to put this aside. Now that the wing and the tail surfaces are done, we're going to move on to our fuselage. Now this fuselage is built complete with B-fold style folds. In case you don't know what a B-fold is, that is where the side cheeks of the fuselage go next to, not on top of, the bottom or the top plank. So in other words, the side cheek is going to meet next to this. But before we do that, we got to make the cavity. If you build floppables before, this is a very common thing. You're simply going to fold this over, use your thumbnail, and remove the excess. Should come out in one nice solid chunk for you. This should be a very simple experience for you guys. Very simple build. Nothing to stress about. Okay, all the reliefs are cut. The next thing is, if you notice that we had a blue line on the plans and also a faint etch line here on the speedboat kit. We're simply going to put our hand down and we're going to lift up on this and establish a nice crease. Now go beyond where you think you need to go. Don't go 90 degrees. You go up to a good 20 degrees or so it rests. You don't want to try to force everything back together. Now we're going to go ahead and just do a practice fit here. There we are. Good tight fit. And the other side of this wing gauge is nothing but a right angle. So that'll help us get our 90 degrees and establish that. Always make sure you get this as true as possible, especially since this is a mid-wing mount airplane. Your wing slots are going to be very dependent on making sure it's not twisted. So another thing you may notice also is I'm leaving this area back here with these wing tabs hanging off the workbench. Reason being is if I fold it up here and I have this area here is going to be bent. That's going to change the angle of your stabilizer. So when you put this fuselage together, let the back of the tail rest off there. So when you fold it flat, this can push nice and flat against the table. Alright, we're going to go ahead and do our B-fold. I'm going to put the most of the amount of the glue on the side of the bottom plate right here. Reason being is a whole bunch of glue against that paper doesn't do a whole lot of good. We want this glue to meet up the side of this fuselage as best as possible. I'm leaving the back end of the fuselage hanging over the table, and I'm going to fold this up to a 90, pushing down against the table the whole time. Don't try to pick this up and do this by hand. Let the table be your friend and push against it. Now that we have this angle established, I'm simply going to hold this up against it, let it dry. We're going to repeat the exact same process on the other side. Alright, our final is the bottom of the fuselage. Turned inverted here, so it's going to be on the top, but it's still a B-fold. The, in this case, top plate is going to go next to the side cheeks of the fuselage. So we're going to go ahead and put glue on both sides of this, and this is crucially important to make sure you get a good strong glue joint. This is where your landing gear is going to fasten to. We'll fold this over. And what I like to do, sounds crazy, is turn this over and seat it hard up against the table. I'm going to rock it back and forth a little bit, making sure that it doesn't glue itself to the table. But what this will do is it'll give a nice square solid cut, and you can put a lot of energy, push and pressure on the side. The tighter you can get this and the more you can get that glue spread out, the stronger it's going to be. The next step is going to be to put the formers on. Now we have two formers, the small one and the big one, and only two slots that are going to go in there. The smaller one's going to go in the front. Simply apply a little healthy amount of glue. You can always go back and reinforce this afterwards. Get it on down in there. And we can go right onto the second one and do the same thing. Alright, we're going to let this dry. While this is drying, we're going to go ahead and install our tail surfaces. Alright, we're going to go ahead and just do a quick test fit. Make sure we're happy. Should tab right into itself like this. Should, right out of the gate, be nice and square and true. Once you're happy with that fit, let's go ahead and glue this part together. I'm actually just going to go ahead and put a little dab of glue here, and then trace right back and stop before the hinge line. That way we don't smear it over top of the stabilizer and get our stabilizer to our rudder. That would be awkward. There we are. Follow up with a little scrap piece. Wipe any excess off. And of course, go back and check for square. Once this is dried, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this with a little bead of glue on both sides. And then we're going to take most of that off. Another thing that's important to know is anytime you heat up a glue surface, it softens up the joint. So you always go back and make sure it's square again. While our stabilizer is drying thoroughly, we're going to go ahead and glue this reinforcement plate in this. This is going to give us a little bit of down thrust, but it's also going to give us a spot for our barbecue skewers to go through and be a little bit stronger. That way you don't get those weird awkward dents in the top there. So we're simply going to go ahead and put a healthy amount of glue. What I like to do, quickly insert it and smear it back and forth. Spread that glue out. But make sure you end up nice and flush with the leading edge there. Now this is going to keep your power pod from fully entering these slots in the front. It's just barely going to enter there. Don't worry about that. The back ones are going to line up. There's going to be barbecue skewers in the front and also your barbecue skewer in the side. That's going to lock everything in for you. Now that everything is dry, let's go ahead and test fit our tail surfaces into the fuselage. Now this is a good opportunity once again to go back, grab our little piece of foam board, make sure that everything is nice and 90 degrees. Now that we're happy with the fit, we're going to go ahead and repeat the process, this time with glue in the proper joints. I'm going to go ahead and put glue on both sides of this rudder keel here, and then I'm also going to put glue where this is going to meet, but I'm going to put on the fuselage. That way we're not dripping glue all over our hands and making a mess. These tabs are really just to hold things in place. You don't have to worry about getting glue right on them. There we go. Nice firm pressure downward. Let's follow up at the very end of this once we're happy with a bead of glue on both sides. Our next step is to install the control horns. Now to do this, I'm going to go ahead and put this push rod on ahead of time. Back in the Baby Blender episodes, when you have control horns that are really close to the push rod access hole, it's kind of hard to get that done, and you can do something by just turning this 90 degrees and make a modified Z-bend. But in this case, I'm simply going to go on the furthest out hole, just like that. Now these control horns are supplied in the kits, but they're also available if you want to scratch build this. You can still get the control horns from our store. A 20 pack's only $5. I'm going to go ahead and open up this slot, feed the wire through, and pass it through the hole that's provided in the kit, just like that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press this into the slot that's been cut by the laser, or by you guys if you're scratch building, and just make sure that I'm happy with the fit. That looks great. Now we'll go back, apply a thin bead of glue, and pop it in the slot. The neat thing about this is the laser actually opens up the cavity inside there. When you pop that paper and that tension there and you put the glue in there, it actually keys the whole control horn and it makes an incredibly strong control horn. You don't need to worry about screws or going crazy beefing it up. It's very, very strong. We're going to repeat the exact same process on the rudder. Our next step is to install the tail skid. Now this is a little bit different. I didn't want a bottom keel down here, so I actually have it recessed just a little bit. Just put a little tiny dab of glue here and about a 2-inch long barbecue skewer cut from your extra barbecue skewers and let it stick. After that, just follow up with a little hot glue bead on top of it. That's going to do wonders to protect your rudder and make it track really nice. Now normally we wait to put the servos in until the very end or at the very beginning. In this case we're going to be doing it in the middle. Reason being is I don't want to be moving around this big wing that's going to be glued in later on. So we'll do as much to the fuselage as we can. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and get your 9-gram servos. These are Hextronic 9 grams. Also, Dan from Laser Toys has a really great budget servo. We actually used it on the toaster plane, and it held up great. Now, it's not responsible to do that, so don't do it, but they're good quality servos. So in this case, we have our linkage stoppers already pre-installed. We're simply going to go ahead and sit our servos down in here. I'm using the 3rd hole out, but it's roughly 1/4 of an inch out from the actual. There we go. This is dimensioned so it'll accept a 5-gram servo in there, so you're going to have to squeeze them in just a little bit or cut it a little bit bigger. Once you have your servos in and you're happy, take them to neutral and then trim off about a 1/4 inch ahead. That way you still have some adjustment, but you don't have to worry about it hitting the front firewall. Now that we're happy with that fit, I'm going to raise both these guys up just a little bit, put a drop of glue underneath each servo, press it down in. Putting your linkage stoppers and centering your servos up ahead of time is priceless. It keeps the build going quickly, and you don't have any surprises when you power anything up. You don't have anything going to extreme deflections and hurting your control surfaces or your push rods or your servos. Now would be a good time to go ahead and install your power pod. Reason being is we have a new way of putting the turtle deck on that's going to make things a lot easier. So what you're going to want to do is go ahead and take your power pod that hopefully you built by now and slide it in and get the last little tabs stuck up in there. And once again, because of the down thrust on there, you'll notice on other designs this is the same way too. These tabs aren't going to go up too far inside there, but don't worry, just get them lined up nice and neat. Once you're happy with that, simply hold your power pod up against as far up as it'll go, and with a rotating motion, go in about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Do this on both sides. Once you're happy with that, you can go ahead and let that drop. We'll go ahead and cut this once again about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Rolling this around like this will keep it from splintering on you. Give a nice soft tip. And we're simply going to take a drop of glue in each hole. Don't go too excessive or it'll make a sloppy mess. And once again, using that rotating motion, slide the sticks in so they only protrude out about 1/2 inch or a little over a centimeter. And just to check everything out, we're going to go ahead and fit this back on. Make sure everything lines up nice and clean. Looks good. Now would be a good time. If you're going off the kit that should line up beautifully, simply go through, lock your power pod in place. While this is on there, we can actually roll that around. I like to leave roughly 1/2 inch on each side of the dowel. Alright, we're going to go ahead and remove our power pod, and we'll put on our turtle deck. Now, as along with our other builds, with the turtle decks, I generally like to start in the back and move forward. Reason being, it's a lot easier to lap things and line things up as you go forward. But the first thing I'm going to want to do is go ahead and measure to the center of this. It should be 2.5 inches, which it is. So we're going to measure 1.25 inches. And I'm just going to simply just put a little dot with my razor blade right there, just a little mark to tell us where the center is. And I'm also going to go up here to 7 inches, and right at 3.5, I'm just going to put a little tiny mark right there, it doesn't really matter, just to give me a really light visible reference where everything is. You can use pencil too, but a little tiny dot is really simple to go with it. And also, because our turtle deck's going to be going on an upward angle, we want the meat nice and flush to this surface here. So I'm going to actually take the razor blade and I'm going to shave this back. You can also use sandpaper as well if you wish to, just so the foam board receives the poster board nice and clean. Let's go ahead and do a practice fit here. If everything worked out right, line up your 2 center marks, and fold this down. You should see no gap in this area right here. And it looks good. Now, while I have this down here, I'm going to go ahead and take my razor blade again and make sure both these sides are nice and even. Once you're happy with that, I'm just going to put a little reference mark there and there. That'll tell me the line that I need to keep, and I'm actually going to tape this one side on. Now, before I do that, I want to take some of the Flite out of the back end of this poster board. So I'm going to kind of roll it up just a little bit so it doesn't wrinkle where we don't want it to be. Rather than trying to mess with all this, I'm simply going to lay this on its side, go back to our 2 reference marks, line them up, and press it down. Now you can see we have a nice door here. And I can take my hot glue gun, and with the nozzle pushing firmly against, flat as can be, it's almost going to look like a ribbon of tape. I'll push down nice and firm, not going for bulk, going for a nice thin smear of glue. I'm going to hold this over and press it down firmly. You'll be amazed how quickly the hot glue dries to poster board. I have no clue why it does. Alright, our next step is we're going to go ahead and fold the poster board over here. Now if everything's right, we should have a nice clean joint that's matched on both sides. Should be nice and square for you. And that looks really good. While this is open like this, I'm going to go ahead and put a little piece of tape right along the poster board here. There we go. Now before I fold this over, I'm going to go back and do the exact same thing I did before with the hot glue gun. I'm going to go right over the top here. You don't have to get too excessive or crazy. And then I'm going to push my glue gun nice and firm at a 90-degree angle and leave a nice little glue ribbon there to be received once I fold this over. Alright, here we go. One nice smooth motion. I'm going to pull against that tape right about in the middle. Then press down and smooth it out. If you did everything right, you're going to have a really nice, clean, tight line between your poster board and your fuselage, and that's exactly what we want. Now this is thoroughly dried and feels good, we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to simply take this X-Acto knife, use a nice sharp one, and I'm going to trim that extra poster board away. Now we're on to the front part. Now, one thing that we've done a little bit differently is we've actually put 2 holes here. Those 2 holes should line up fairly close to the holes that you made when you put your powder pot in. If not, you can kind of force it. But the whole goal with this was to clean up that front nose a little bit and also give you a nice anchor point for your poster board. We wanted this to have a nice flat feel like David Vindestol's Spitfire design, but at the same time have a little bit of a round in the nose, a little soft transfer. So this is the solution I came up with. Once we're happy with that fit, we're going to go ahead and just fold this around. Now I'm going to open this up and put a bead of hot glue right down the middle there. I'm going to press firmly, 90 degree, making sure it's hard up against that former. This is going to make this area much stronger than its previous designs. You can even while this is drying, go as far to put a bead down here and fold the excess underneath. Now's the time we're going to do the exact same thing we did on the back. We're going to kind of roll this under, and we're going to find its center. And thanks to this being our alignment, it should stay very centered all the way through. If you notice any weird bulging, most likely you're pulling it one side to the other. And I'm going to go back to this poster board and kind of crease it down here, taking some of that fight away from it. I'm happy with that, so we're going to do our tape trick once again. And before we flop this over, we're going to follow up with a bead of glue, and we're actually going to put half the glue on this side here because it's not going to be possible to put it on afterwards. Not too thick, and just about halfway up there. Alright, hold this down. You got a little time to work with this, so don't panic. Once you press down there, roll that tape over so it finishes the job and makes it nice and strong. Just like that. Now we're going to repeat the process on the other side. Now we're just going to go here. I'm just going to trim this just about flush. And follow up with a little piece of tape to finish it off. Do the same on the other side. We are into the fun part now. We get to install the wings. Now to do this, we're going to want to take our time because we don't want to wrinkle the fuselage and the wing. If you've done the cruiser or any of the other previous designs where you have to slide it through, taking your time is the key to success. So here's our wing right here. We're simply going to go ahead and with a rocking motion, we're going to start it right at the pinnacle there where the undercamber is inside. We're going to simply rock it back and forth. Don't press too hard, let it find its way. There we are. Horribly annoying noise. Before I put on the work tape, I'm going to go ahead and just tape my servo wires out of the way here so we don't get them caught in the wing. I'm going to put this on the work table here. In a steady rocking motion. Now if you see before I take it in, there's two reference marks here and here. That's going to be where your fuselage is going to line up with the outside of both sides. Now a little secret, the left wing is a touch longer than the right wing. Don't fight this, don't put it in the middle. What's going to happen is if you do, you're not going to be able to turn right very well because the torque of the engine is going to want to cause a left turn. Rather than making the rudder crooked, I went ahead and made the left wing longer. That way when you're flying slow you have a little bit of extra lift, but when you're giving a lot of throttle and you have all that torque, the wing's producing even more lift and it cancels it out beautifully. Now's a good time to go ahead and sight down your plane and make sure that you're happy with the look of it. Now with this design, one thing I want to strongly caution you for, the Old Fogey you're able to remove the wings and put it in easily. With this design, a warped wing is going to affect it immensely. So if you have weird side effects of flight, first thing you're going to want to do is look at your wing and make sure the trail edge is parallel to the leading edge. If it's not, simply take a hairdryer, twist the wing a little ever so slightly, and wave the hairdryer over and heat that up. Don't boil it because it'll melt the foam if it gets above 250 degrees. But just warm it up a little bit and give it a nice gentle twist, or just put a little pop can on there and let it sit there. But make sure your wing is always parallel from trailing edge to leading edge. If you have a tendency where it's turning really flat, it won't turn to the right, won't turn to the left, it wants to fly always awkward, first thing to check is your wings. This wing is not as strong as the fold-over wings and not as easily resistant to warping. It's much like an old-timer back in the build-up days, but you don't want to just throw it in the car and have one wing pinned up and twisting. It will cause problems and you will have to fix that. A hairdryer in 5 minutes will do that every time though. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the bottom and I'm going to lock it down with a bead of glue. Now what I can follow up with is a bead of glue on the top. Nice and thin. Our next step is to make our connections. Now of course, because this is a 3-channel, the rudder is going to plug into your aileron channel. That way your rudder and your elevator are tied to your right channel on mode 2. Very important for beginners. You don't want to be flying elevator on your right channel and then rudder on your left. It's going to be very confusing for you. This plane's going to fly much like a bank and yank, simple old-timer. Just going to be easy to fly. But make sure that you put your rudder into your aileron. Everything else is hooked up standard. Go ahead and install your power pod. Don't get too hasty with this and try to just force it through and make a new hole. If it doesn't line up perfectly, find out why. It could be because it's scratch build that it doesn't line up exactly, but most of the time if it's not seated right, you're going to pop a new hole through there. We really don't want that. If you do get a little sloppy around here and it gets a little warped out, worn out, you can always go back with some extreme packing tape and repair that area, and or use a cut-off gift card with some holes drilled. Once again, we had a video that showed the reinforcement techniques of that. So, alright, we got this gun. Let's go ahead and power this up and check our control surfaces and our throws. Go ahead and take a flat piece of foam or some popsicle sticks, but just hold the control surfaces nice and flat. And with your other hand, tighten down your linkage stopper. Make sure it's nice and snug. If your linkage stopper slips, your rudder's not going to work too well. Now we'll go ahead and check our throws. Cool. Alright, our next step is to bend our landing gear. But before we do that, we're going to want to put the barbecue skewers in that the landing gear mount to. And those are these holes down here. Simply go ahead, run your barbecue skewer through all the way from one side to the other. I like to leave roughly about a ½ inch on both sides just so the rubber bands can get around there pretty easily. Now we're ready to bend our landing gear. Alright, now this landing gear is made almost identical to the Old Fogey, but the only difference with it is that we're going to actually sweep the landing gear much farther forward. We're going to take half of 15.5, which is 7.5 makes 15, and a quarter makes a half. And we're going to bend this roughly to a little bit beyond a 90-degree angle. Once we're happy with that, we're going to measure roughly about 2¼ inches, and we're going to bend 90 degrees. And we're going to do this on both sides. Now say you're a little bit off on one side and you realize that, just match the other sides to that new measurement. Don't take it for granted, don't go ahead and try to rebend it because you're going to fatigue this area. So just double check there. We're still at 2¼ inches. And this is where the bending begins. We're going to lay this down and we want the landing gears to match each other and sprawl out and a little bit forward. So we're just going to go ahead and tweak this ever so slightly until we get the angle that we're looking for. Our final step is that we're going to measure just a little bit over 1.5 inches, between 1.5 inches and 1.75 inches to accommodate for our wheel pants. So we're going to go right here. I'm actually going to just go right in the middle, 1 5/8 inches. Now if you're not using wheel pants, you can make this a little bit thinner. And we're going to simply bend this out as close to the angle as we want, but it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to match that up on the other side now. At this point, we're going to go ahead and put on our wheels and the wheel pants. Now, the wheel pants video is a completely separate video because it stands alone. The wheel pants can be added to the Cruiser, the Baby Blender, the Old Fogey, and of course the Speedster here. And the Old Fogey and the Speedster have that actual kit included in it. If you want it for the Cruiser or the Baby Blender, you're going to have to order that separately, but we have a video for you. Now, the wheel pants will accept up to 2.75 inches, so that's 2 3/4 inch wheels, even 3 if you trim it out a little bit. But for our kits, we include on this plane and the Old Fogey and the Cruiser 2.75 inch wheels. It's a very common size that you can buy, very lightweight wheels. They're good stuff. We have our wheel pants on our wheels, and as you can see, I'm not using our foam wheels, so you don't have to use the foam wheels. The reason we put those in the kit is we want to give you something to get out there and fly and have fun with. But these are from Laser Toys. They're like $3 or $4. It's amazing value and really good wheels, so I went ahead and used those. Now, just like all of our other bungee systems, we're going to go ahead and we'll just kind of pre-struct our bungee. I'm going to start it here, overlap, going around the back, pull it nice and taut, go under the 2 sides. Now I'm going to bring this guy back and center. A little bit of work. We'll wrap it around the front and onto the home there. Nice thing about this, it gives you an immense amount of bungee, and if you saw on the JR videos, when this guy's rolling around, it has an immense amount of give and just looks so cute. No vintage air racer is complete without a canopy. So we cut this out of poster board. You can paint it black ahead of time, but no vintage air racer is complete without a little windscreen to protect those pilots. So we're going to go ahead and take the little laser cut etch marks and line up from point to etch mark on both sides. Just take your ruler to get a nice clean bend and bend it back. This isn't necessary. You can make a closed canopy, you can leave it off, but it just adds a little bit of an extra touch. Now that we're happy with that, we'll simply go ahead, find our center mark, find the angle we want. You can put some little pencil marks there, but generally, I just put a little dot of glue on both sides and press it on down. Now this is where the balance comes in. The balance is going to be depicted by your battery. If you went really crazy with the glue and you have a lot of tail weight, you may have to use a bigger battery or move the battery farther forward. But the biggest thing we want is we do not want a tail heavy airplane. Our balance point is right on the top crease of that wing, and every plane's going to fly a little bit different, but a good starting point is anywhere from a 1000 milliamp to a 1300 milliamp battery right at the nose. I'm going to go ahead and put this up here. A 1300 milliamp battery will fly you roughly about 20 minutes if you're light on the throttle. And this plane doesn't like to fly heavy on the throttle or fast. It likes to fly nice and easy around half throttle. You can see that just a little bit forward. We got our throws depicted, we got our balance done. The next thing to do is go out and fly it. Well friends, this is what happens when I run a little bit long and I get a little bit too late. We end up test flying at night, but you guys deserve a test flight. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch FliteTest, to support us through buying stuff at the store, but also through making memories. One of our biggest goals is to build relationships and make memories by building and getting people into the hobby. We're hoping that you're going to do it with this design. And as always, if you're watching this kit is now available in the store. You can go to the store. Wheel pants are included in these kits. Also, if you have a Baby Blender, a Cruiser, or anything else, the wheel pants are also available separately, and we encourage you. It's a beautiful addition to any one of your foamies, even ones that may not be FliteTest planes. We want to thank you, and also if you're wondering why we have facial hair, David and I, listen to the podcast episode 5. We have a great podcast. You guys have been wonderful supporting it, and I want to really thank you for the feedback. It's guided us through the whole entire process, and you're the reason why it's so successful. All right, I'm gonna get this thing up in the air. It's a little bit windy. We'll see what happens.